cathode ray tube, also known as the CRT, which I'll be calling it for not time purposes, but because I don't want to say cathode ray tube every time. Anyways, Odell Turnbull, COM 235, Professor Creasman. The cathode ray tube, aka the CRT, is a vacuum tube that contains one or more electron guns and a phosphorescent screen and is used to display images. That's a tongue twister there. The CRT modulates, accelerates, and deflects electron beams into the screen to create the images. When the electrons strike the phosphorescent surface, that's when the images are produced. Black and white colors. Well, originally it was black. When they originally made the tube, it would only produce black and white images onto the screen. But then they found that whereas using 3 of them, which then they were able to put into one to color, but the 3 could have different colors that would then produce colored television sets or colored images onto whatever screen it was reflecting to. The beams would collide, creating the color trifecta, as one would say, to create colored television. The 3 basic principles of the CRT, bear with me here, because although it is to us something that we we just see it on the TV, there's a lot of science and physics that went behind the creation of the CRT. It was not something that they just ran across. They had to find out that the electrons is what would actually be able to power it once they were released into a vacuum from very hot metals. These electrons would then be accelerated, and their direction of movement, controlled by other voltage between the plates or a magnetic field, would then carry the electron current. A beam of electrons striking some of the materials using the zinc sulfide would cause the material to glow, giving a spot of light as wide as the beam would become, which then would put the image onto the screen and to see whatever it is that you were trying to see given there. Here is kind of how it's created, this picture here, and kind of how it works as far as where the heater and the control grid is what puts the electron beam through the coils, which then puts your once they reflect off of the fluorescent screen, then that's when the images would be then pushed out and produced onto the screen for display. The CRT is used in television sets, computers, automated tellers, video game machines. That'll get a lot of attention there. And then even as far as radar displays, they all have the CRT. Now, as far as today, the flat screen TVs that we have no longer use the CRTs. It's semiconductors, and those are better suited to modern digital television signals, as well as video games. What was interesting to me to find out is that from console to screen, using the semiconductors, you have a much better response time for video games, a much better reaction time from controller to console to television. So those are CRTs are kind of becoming no longer used. A different science is going into what's made into the flat screen TVs that we see today. This picture here is an example of the older versions when they did use the CRTs, which is how the display was used in the much bigger box televisions we had growing up. The history of the CRT. Now, the CRT was discovered in the late 1990s. Late 1990s. But the technology for the mass production wasn't until the 1930s. So the first cathode ray device was actually invented by a German scientist, Carl Ferdinand Braun, and that was in 1897. But Braun introduced the CRT with a fluorescent screen known as the cathode ray oscilloscope. Oscilloscope, another tongue twister. But it wasn't until Boris Rising later on, he was the first inventor to actually transmit crude geometrical patterns into the television. And then later on in 1929, Vladimir Kozma Zworykin, he invented the cathode ray tube called the kinescope, which was what was first used in television, which was then used in the primitive television systems that we all saw, but now seeing different one with the flat screen. But we all saw for centuries as far as the production and development of TVs. Without the CRT, you wouldn't even be watching this project right now. So it all came through that Carl Ferdinand Braun, and he was able to invent it, which then carried over into way more technological advances when it came to TV and video. Thank you.